Good morning. It is Wednesday, June 6th. Taking a look at the morning charts, we've got the US dollar index, the 4-hour chart. You can see we've been having this nice run up, and more or less we've had a fairly controlled, it's been a steep rally in the US dollar index, but we've had a nice, you'd have a breakout, pullback, breakout, pullback, another breakout. We're in the middle of a pullback now, and the question is this another consolidation before it really explodes to the upside if Europe doesn't get something sorted out here sooner than later? Zooming in on the shorter term chart here, you can see we've had a nice consolidation. Yesterday we had a little bit of a pop in price in the morning, and since then we started to see it fade back as it pulled back in the later afternoon. We saw stocks and commodities put in a pretty decent rally this morning, and today we're seeing the equities market continue to pull back, or sorry, the US dollar index continue to pull back down to the support zone, and of course that's really helping relieve some pressure on stocks and commodities. We're seeing about the SP500 up just over 1%. Crude oil is up 1.5%. Silver's up over 3%. So we're going to see a pretty big jump in stocks and commodities this morning. The big question is this just a pullback? We've had a nice run. Is this just a nice consolidation, and we're coming down back into a support zone before the US dollar really takes off and starts back up again, and we see equities and commodities continue their trend down? Now if we look at the charts here real quick, you'll be able to see a lot of charts are setting up with a very similar pattern. This is the weekly chart of crude oil, and you can see we're down in a support range, so we've been anticipating a bit of a bounce, which we're starting to see this week. But if we just zoom into the shorter time frame, go to the 4-hour chart, you can see we've had a strong move down in the last week and a half. Of course, it's happened on rising volume, so that means there's distribution still in crude oil. And this bounce here, we're starting to see prices just kind of come up, and we're seeing lower prices on the bounce. So we're not really seeing big buying step in. We're just seeing an oversold condition, and the sellers are letting the price kind of float back up, so eventually they'll step on it and sell it at a higher price. They don't want to just keep selling it down, or else they won't get a good bang for their dollar. So this is usually what happens. You see strong selling, then you'll see the sellers let off. They'll let it float up, start to work its way back up into resistance, and then step on it again. Very similar to what we saw here. We saw a strong move down at crude oil, and the sellers kind of let off with relatively light volume. Market just kind of trades sideways. Couldn't even get any steam there. It just continued to grind lower on low volume, and eventually got to the point where distribution came back in. They said, okay, I'm unloading another batch of this long position here. So that's kind of where we stand at overall. This price action in crude oil, we're still in a downtrend. It's not a really bullish sign in my opinion, and we still could see prices still come back down, test those lows, maybe even go a little bit lower. But you can see these red lines here. This is the kind of the sweet spot, and I wouldn't be surprised if we flirt with it and break that level a little bit going forward in the next week or so. Looking at natural gas, this is a 4-hour chart. Similar thing. We've seen a nice little bounce in natural gas. We had a move down, consolidation, had a gap down, and now we're back up trading at resistance. So we'll see if that ends up pulling back, coming down, or actually continues to head sharply lower going forward. But overall, it is also trading at a resistance level. Looking at gold miners, and silver, you can see here, if I just zoom in a little bit, gold had this little bit of a bull flag here right under this resistance level, starting to break out there this morning, starting to move up. It's not on really strong volume. Really would like to see some more strong volume behind it. Overall, it's a little bull flag, and it's just slowly creeping up and starting to run to new highs. If we see the US dollar bottom here, we're going to see gold likely pull back down. Now overall, I think gold and silver will hold up fairly well. Even if the dollar rallies, I think the safe haven is the dollar and precious metals, so they may move up together. Again, if the dollar moves up very sharply, gold will likely trade sideways, if not lower. but I don't feel as though gold is really going to get sold off very hard going forward. But we'll have to play that by ear and see what kind of news comes out. But overall, gold is starting to break out above a key resistance level. Really needs to start breaking some of these highs, and we need to see some more big buying volume step in behind it. Overall, it's still in a downtrend, and it may be putting in a base. This could be a nice big basing formation that is starting to form here going forward. If we just zoom out a little bit more, you can see this kind of key pivot level and where we're trading. So overall, it's still making lower highs and lower lows, and it is starting to show some signs that there is life behind it here. Looking at gold miners continue to move up, and they've started to create this rising wedge, which I pointed out last week. We've got this rising wedge, usually get some type of blow off top or so, and then prices pull back. Very similar to what was going in here. You get this little rising wedge, gets a little bit overbought, and then eventually you see a little bit of profit taking, and you see the market pull back down. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see the market pull back down here in the next couple sessions. Looking at silver. Silver broke out of its little basing pattern this morning. This is a mini basing pattern, not a major one in my opinion. We've got this more or less kind of channel it was trading in. This morning it started to hook up, started to break that level, and is running higher. It's still got a couple more pretty key resistance levels to get through. Volume isn't really all that strong, so I have a feeling that these moves, if the dollar puts in a bounce today or tomorrow, we'll probably see gold and silver start to pull back a little bit. This almost looks more a little bit more like a shakeout where prices are going up, going to get people long, and then we see prices come right back into their range again. Looking at bonds, money has been pulling out of bonds, slowly rotating into looks like it's been moving into gold and possibly trying to front run, trying to get into the stock market, as it looks as though it's trying to put in a bottom. Overall, you can see here the price has pulled back a couple trading sessions. Overall, that's normal price action. If we just look at this last run, we had a breakout across here. You get a rally, you get a pullback, which eventually turns into a little bit of a consolidation, and then you get the next run higher. And now we're right here, we're on the pullback, and again it looks as though, in my opinion, we probably see bonds start to move back up and consolidate here, and then possibly continue to go higher again. So bonds look as though they could start to put in a bounce, which means the equities market should pull back. And again, commodities are all starting to get a little move up into resistance levels, and it looks as though they could have a pullback here if the dollar can put in a bounce. Now looking at the SP500 this morning, here is the daily chart. You can see where we stand. The last trade that we had, we ended up shorting right at the near the close here, right over here. We got this nice downdraft, started to pocket some cash, and we got out yesterday once we started to break the previous day's high. Overall, we're seeing the futures market here. We're seeing a nice move up. We're trading at the 1300 level on the SP500. That's a pretty key resistance level. There will be people looking to short at the 1300. We are coming up to the 14 and the 20-day moving average, just like we did back here. And I'll show you on the short-term chart, but volume it hasn't been very strong on this move up. And yesterday we kind of closed at a pretty overbought territory where everybody was piling into the trade, covering their shorts, and usually when everybody's covering their shorts, that momentum can stall out. Now if you just look at this chart here, we had a very similar bounce back here. You get a bounce, a 1 or 2 day bounce, and then you get a pullback. These candles, it doesn't look like much of a pullback, but this was a pretty significant dip in the market, and that's what I feel as though we could see here. We could see today put in a high, see another a day pullback or dip, and then might get stepped into or bought up back up again for another shorting opportunity a little bit later in a couple more days. But overall, we are starting to get right up into this resistance level, and could be a good shorting opportunity coming up. Looking at the futures chart and the intraday price action here, you can see where we stand. We sold down last week, early this week, started to see a nice bounce. Now it feels as though we're trading right around something like this, like that, like that, something just like this type of price action, where you see price sell down, get oversold, you get a really strong rebound, and the first rebound usually gets sold into, so you'll see it come back down. It's usually a percent or two drop in the market. Same here, you see the first big strong bounce, first one gets sold into. This one never recovered, went into much lower prices, but then once we got this oversold bounce, we get the strong rally back up, and then you see prices come back down. Usually the first strong short covering bounce does get sold into, so we've had this nice strong move down, which we took full advantage of, and now we're coming back up more or less into a little bit of a resistance zone. If you just mark this line across, we've got consolidation back here, so there's some price action. We've got a pivot low, we've got this little breakout zone, so it is going to act as a resistance level, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see prices pull back down 1.5%, possibly even 2%, or a double bottom here. And if sellers continue to be strong, we'll probably see prices actually drop fairly sharply. Usually the biggest move happens right at the end of a trend, so we could see prices really pick up and drop off. So that's kind of what I'm looking for today. We might look to get a short position and take another stab at another leg down in this market. Now if we just zoom in a little bit just to this more recent price action, you can see here, if we look at this past price action, you see volume pick up as price decline. There's distribution, and then we saw that first bounce, and that first bounce got sold into, which is where I think we are somewhere around this morning, looking for some type of sell-off, which is 1.5%, 2% pullback. And then from there we saw prices continue to work their way higher into resistance, and of course that move higher happened on lighter and lighter volume, and eventually that rising price rolled over, and then we saw the next wave of distribution selling, which is high volume decline. And now we're starting to see this first rebound here back up into resistance, which is right through here, which are these previous lows, this pivot low, and of course we've got a pretty strong pivot low here and a breakdown here. So that's kind of where we're coming into today, and may get a shorting opportunity to catch and move down to the around 1280, which this will act as a support zone here, simply because we've got these tops. And that's about a 20-point move from where we are now in the SP500, which is about 1.5% change. With any luck, it would continue to sell off and work its way sharply lower for a blow off bottom this week or next week, and the market would actually put in a bottom for a bounce. But that's kind of where we stand right now is in this situation. Anyways, that's it for now, and I will talk to you in a little bit. Bye bye.